6, which is about tables. And our goal for this is just to create and format different tables with HTML. So obviously first you just want to open up Visual Studio Code and create a new file. And then I have format the document with the essential code and save the file as an HTML file. So for those of you who may not remember, the essential code is going to be those opening and closing HTML tags. And then nested inside those, we have two sections. We have our opening and closing tags for head, and this is where we put our metadata. This is the background data that helps the browser read the code. And then we have our second section, which is our opening and closing body tags, and this is where we put anything we want to display on the web page. Inside the head, we're also going to do our opening and closing title tags, and inside that is what we will make the title for this. So I'm just going to name mine Lab 6. I think that's where we're at, yep. And this is just what's going to show up in the tab as the title of the page. And then in the body is where we're going to start. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to name this something like lab6.html or index.html or table.html, whatever. It doesn't matter. But we have to save it as a .html to make it work. And here we are, we're ready to go. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to recreate 6 different tables, and I'm going to walk you through how to do each of those. To have a one long sheet that lists, has different headings for each table, and then each of the tables underneath, okay? So I'm going to have you go ahead and start by making an H1 that says title. So if we do this, table 1. Now, right now I actually have a mistake in my code, so if I open it up, I'm not going to see it. And look at this, where it says Lab 6, I'm getting a bunch of code up here instead of just my Lab 6 title. And that is actually because I forgot to put an n/ in my closing tag here. So let's refresh that. Alright, great. Now I have a heading 1. And now let's go ahead and make a p tag so that we have like a little description for it. So a p tag, and we want it to say this table stretches the length of the open browser windows. So this will be inside opening and closing p tags. And what you can do is you can just copy this if you want to not have to write the whole thing out. Now it should say this. Now underneath that, we're going to recreate the table, okay? And this is just a table with 1 row, 1 column. So we can just say table, and then we have a row inside that, so tr, and then a 1 bit of table data, so td, and we just want it to say table number 1. Save that and see what happens. Okay, well, it looks, we have something. But it's not exactly like what we want it. So let's go ahead and add a border around that. So actually not style, it's just border equals 1. There we go. And then we also need a width of it because we want it to stretch the length of the open browser window. So let's go ahead and do width equals, and then instead of a pixel amount, I'm just going to say 100% here. Now it's stretching 100% of the screen. And that's table 1. Alright, for table 2, which is still going to be inside the body, but we want a whole new table. So I'm going to add some space here. And I, again, want to make an H1 tag so that we have a little heading. So let's do H1, table 2, closing H1 tag. So now if we look at it, there we go. And we're going to do another p tag description here. So opening and closing p tag. Remember to make those tags lowercase. And then this table is 200 pixels wide and has 4 cells, okay? There we go. Beautiful. Alright, and then under that, let's make our table. So opening and closing table tags. And It's 200 pixels wide, so we do know that. So we can actually start by giving it a border, and then we can say width equals 200 pixels, so we can already start to format that. See, we don't have any data in there yet, so all we have is that weird little border. But we want one row with 4 cells. So let's go ahead and inside the table start a row. So table row, opening and closing. And then inside that, we want to make 4 different table datas. So cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, and cell 4. And if you want these to say something other than cell 1, cell 2, whatever, you can do that. I don't mind. Just as long as the structure of the table is there. Alright. So now we have one row with 4 bits of data in it. Beautiful. Exactly what we want it to look like. Alright. Let's do table 3. So we're getting there. So still inside body, but we want to make this a new table. So I'm going to go down here. And here I'm going to add another H1, and I'm going to say table 3. So another header. There we go. We're going to give it another description. So again, you can just copy that. I'm going to put this in between P tags. Looks like this. And then let's go ahead and recreate this. So, well, we know it's 400 pixels wide, so let's go ahead and add that in. So table, opening and closing, and then let's say, border equals 1, and then width equals 400 pixels. Great. And now we have 3 rows and 3 columns each, okay? So let's make a table row. This is our first row. And inside the first row we have 3 columns. So let's make table data. Just gonna name it column 1 because it's a little easier than all of this. You don't have to write all of that. Again, I'm just looking for the structure, 3 columns, 3 rows. So I'm just gonna say column 1 because I think that'll be easy. And so we have the structure for, we're saying row 1, and then we're saying column 1, column 2, column 3. That's what each of these table datas are. So now if I save that, look at that, we're already starting to get that. And now we just need to do that again. So we need 3 different rows. Now what we could do is we could just copy this and paste it twice so that we have 3 rows. So we'll do that. That's a nice, quick, easy way to populate it. Or if you wanted to, you could just write this code out again 2 more times. But essentially what you're going to do is have that first row with the 3 columns, and then if you're not copy pasting, you can just do that again. So second row we want to make, and then table data inside each of these. And then we want to make a third row, so table row. Alright, so now it should look like this. Beautiful. All right, for table 4, we're going to start working on col spans, okay? So, let's go ahead and take this step at a time. So, let's go ahead with the... Oh, nope, we want it outside of that table. We want to start a new heading. H1, this is table 4. All right. And then we have a little description. This table is identical to table 3, except it has 2 cells that span multiple columns. So let's go ahead and put that in a P tag. And if it's getting too long, you can always right-click and hit Format Document, and it will, usually it'll push that down. It's not right now, but you can always try it again. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our table in there. So one thing you could do is you could just go up to table 3 and grab everything from the opening to the closing of that, copy it, and then paste it in here to get that started before we add that span. But I'm gonna go ahead and write it out for you so that you have it. So let me go ahead and write it out. So underneath that P tag, let's go ahead and start a table. And remember, for this one, we wanted it to be 400 pixels wide with a border of 1. So border equals 1 and width equals 400 pixels. And then let's close out that table. And then we need 3 rows. So TR table row 1. Inside that, I'm going to add that data. 3 bits of data for the 3 different columns. Alright, I'm just going to hit Format Document. Put it all nicely for us. Alright, beautiful. So now we have 1 row over here. And again, you can copy paste these so that you don't have to write them again, but I'm just going to write them again for you. TR. So opening and closing TR tags for that row. Then opening and closing TD tags for each column. Oh my goodness, I'm not great at typing that, am I? Look at that. And then lastly, 1 more row inside that table. With 3 bits of data again, opening and closing TD tags for each of those. Alright. Great, so now we're ready. We have it, it's identical, except, let's see what's different about this. We have the span here for this very first one. This top one's going to span 2, and then this one's going to span 2. So we need to get those column spans in there, alright? So the first one is easy enough. We want column 1 to span that entire section. So let's go ahead and in the first row for table 4, let's take away column 2. Actually, I can even just get rid of column 3. So now, like right now, it's going to look like this. And now let's span column 1. So inside that table data, we're going to say column span equals, and then we're going to say let's span 2. It's going to push that over. Look at that. Lovely. Alright. Now we want to do this one as well, the one at the bottom. So remember, you can only push outward. So we're going to start with this one in the middle here. So column 2 here. And we want to push that out. So let's go back to our files, and we're going to go to, remember, the 3rd row down. So let's find our third TR, and then let's find that middle one, column 2, which is what we want to push forward. I'm just going to delete column 3, so now it looks like this. And then I'm going to push this with a col span so that column 2 spans those 2 rows. Excellent. And that is all for table 4. Alright, so now let's do table 5. So again, table 5 is identical to table 3. So again, you can go back up to table 3. You can copy and paste this entire table, and then you can add in those row spans, or you can just write it out, which I'm going to do for you. So we're going to start with our heading, table 5. Oh my goodness. And then our P text, which is going to say this table is identical to table 3, yada yada yada. So we can put that in. Alright. So now, looks like this. Lovely. And then let's go ahead and write that in. So again, we need 3 rows, 3 columns. So we're going to have to start with a table. Closing table tags. We're going to need 3 sets of TRs for table rows. And this is just another way to do it. You can start by adding all 3 of those opening and closing TRs and add in the data afterward. So I'm doing the same thing I did for everything else. I'm just showing you alternate ways to start typing that in. We don't have anything yet, but I'm going to go ahead and add in my border and my width, which I think was 400 pixels. Alright, yep, that looks great. And now we just need to add in that data. So we have 3 rows here, 3 sets of opening and closing rows. In each of those, I'm going to add my 3 sets of table data. I'm just going to name it something like data 1 again. Because it doesn't matter what you write in here, as long as you have the data in there. Alright, perfect. You could write column 1, column 2, column 3. Actually, I think I am going to switch that just because I want it to look consistent throughout my page. And then you could just copy and paste this into each of those different sets, but I'm going to go ahead and just write them. One more set to add in table data for. Alright, great. Now it looks like this. Perfect. And we want the row, column 1 to span down and cover both row 1 and row 2 within this column. So what we're going to do is we're going to find where those rows are. So first we want to make space for it to be pushed down. So I'm going to get rid of column 1 in row 2. So let's find our second row, which is this one here. And I'm just going to get rid of column 1. So now we have some space. These are just going to get pushed over as we push that down. Now we can go ahead and in column 1, we can say row span equals 2. And it will go ahead and push that down and push those over. Alright? So now we need to do this for one more section. We want column 3 to go down both of these and span both of these rows 2 and 3. So what we need to do is we need to find row 3 and get rid of column 3 to make space for it. So let's go to row 3 and delete column 3. Perfect. And then we're going to go to row 2, column 3. That's row 2, column 3, and we're going to push that down with row span equals 2. Excellent. All right, so we're almost done. We only have one more table left. Table 6 is going to look pretty similar to what we did, what I showed you for the very first table demo. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with a heading. So after table, I'm going to do... And also, I realized I forgot to put my slash in here, so just make sure that you're always making sure the closing tag for your table has a slash. I think I made the same mistake up here when we were doing table 3. I think I forgot to put a closing slash in the TR. So if you're finding things aren't working, just make sure that you always have a backslash, or I think it's a forward slash, in your closing tag. But yeah, so let's go ahead and do that heading, table 6. Perfect. We'll go ahead and add in this P tag here, which I'm just going to copy. Excellent. And now let's go ahead and recreate the following tables. So first we need that caption up here. So let's start with table, and I'm going to get a border of 1 and a width of 500 pixels for this one. Close that out. And then we are going to give it a caption, opening and closing caption tags. And it doesn't have to say exactly what it says in here. You can. I'm just going to write sample caption. Now it looks like this. So now we just have to add our next section. So this has 3 rows. So in the first row, though, it's going to be that table header rather than table data. So let's start our first row. And then table header. All right, looks like that. Perfect. And now we want table data for our other 2 rows. So let's make a second row, table row. Let's go ahead and opening and closing table data. I'll use column just for consistency. Perfect. And just one more. And you can just hit format document if you want it to format like that. And there we go, our final table. All right, so make sure everything looks like this, something like this. And once you're done, what I want you to do is just make sure to save everything. Make sure that you close out Visual Studio Code before you do this. And then you're going to right click on it and just hit compress. I have a couple of different things here. This is the file that I was working on, though. Right click and hit compress, and then zip this file and send it in.